Hello everyone, welcome to the weekly Purple Penny coin news video. My name's Mark. I own and run the Purple Penny along with my wife Catherine. We've been here coming up to 5 years now. We're just a small family run coin and banknote business. It's just me and Catherine here, and sometimes we have an employee, but he's gone missing at the moment. We buy and sell coins over the counter here. We're a Royal Australian Mint distributor, and we're open Wednesday, Thursday, Friday 10 to 4 and Saturday 9 to 1. And of course we have a website called thepurplepenny.com where we do our level best to list up a bunch of new stuff every week that appeals to coin collectors of every type. Right, what's happened last week? Well, last week we still saw the tail end of the change of Monarch sets. The Royal Australian Mint is sending out another batch of sets to distributors. We're going to get another batch. They're still available for purchase over the counter here, so please don't overpay for them on the secondary market. There's a lot of them around. I did see a number of links online this morning of dealers who are selling them online still for release price, so there's no need to overpay for those sets. We did our usual buying and selling here. Last week there was one good buy that I will tell you about next week because it was quite remarkable, but I'll take some video of it during the week when I get a chance, and we'll show it to you next week what we bought last week. Other than that, it was pretty much a normal week for us. So let's jump into the news, but before we do that we'll just say hello to everyone. Thank you for everyone who's watching live today, and hello to everyone who's watching later today or tomorrow or whatever it is on... sorry, my computer just disappeared for a second then. Everyone who's watching on YouTube later. Hello Peter, Greg, Ogie, Gwen, Andrew, Adam, Charles, Brett, Catherine, thanks for watching mate. Wendy, Ray, Antonius, Aaron, George, Glenn, Alex, Daryl, Jason and Mike. Thank you everyone for saying hello and watching today. Right, so let's jump into the news here if we can get the right thing going. Thank you to Peter for his wrap up of the 30th anniversary sales results. He's done a nice graph for us again. We'll just pop that up now. So again, this week we had about that sort of mid-40s number of sets being sold for the 35th anniversary $2 sets, and the prices really have settled to $300 to $330. I've seen them selling for $300 fairly consistently on social media. People started getting their sets from the Mint ballot last week. I did notice a number of people said that they got them last week. So that really has just settled at $300 or so. I'm not sure whether it'll go up or down from here. I thought it would have dropped a little bit lower once the ballot set started appearing, but it's just holding steady at the moment. Peter did point out one really interesting auction. An auction finished at $910 for a 35th anniversary set, and of course that doesn't make any sense. Why would an auction finish at $910? And Peter sent me a link to the bidding activity, and you can see that just there. So there were 3 bidders on this set that auctioned for $910. One of the bidders dropped out at about $310, which is the current retail price, and then the other 2 bidders chased it up to $910. Why? Could just be shill bidding, and shill bidding is where the seller uses either alternate accounts or people that they know that have accounts to bid things up in an attempt to achieve a high price. And in this case I suspect it's not to achieve a high price for a sale, but to use it as justification or an attempt to justify an increase in price of these sets. Peter and I have seen this sort of thing before, where a whole bunch of auction sales happen in a bunch, and the price appears to go up, and the market actually follows those fake auctions upwards. So yeah, I think this is just market manipulation, Daryl. Thank you for pointing that out. So this is the challenge we face on the secondary market for this sort of stuff is that it is quite a small market. The number of people that are buying and selling is quite small, and if some players team up with each other and get up to this sort of activity, then they could single-handedly push the price of these sets up on the basis of non-existent sales. So thank you, Peter, for pointing that sale out to me. Next item in the news is a radio interview I did last Monday. About 2 hours after I finished up the video, I did a radio interview with ABC Adelaide on their afternoon show, and their presenter had done his research. He knew a fair bit about coins, and he had the terminology right, and he asked some questions mainly about Charles III coins, just about the mintage and how they're distributed and that sort of thing, and he actually put a listener through, and I got to answer a question just about what I thought about the value of Charles coins if the king was to pass away in short order. And I think that it probably won't have too much of an effect on anything. There's still many millions of his dollar coins out into circulation. Perhaps some of the smaller denominations might be a bit harder to get, but they will come out in sets this year, so I don't know whether it'll have a big effect if the king happens to pass away, but let's hope he doesn't. Right, we'll just say a few more hellos here to people. Hello, Philip. Good to join in live. To see you joining in live today, Philip. Peter, Bevan. No worries, Bevan. Happy birthday, mate. Hope you're having a good day. Hello, Ellie. Hello, Samantha. Hello, Alison. Hello, Gary, Shane, Christopher, Tracy, and Mark. Thanks, everyone, for joining in today. Next item on the news is reselling going on in China. So the Chinese government this year has released 3.2 billion yuan worth of commemorative Year of the Dragon coins and banknotes into circulation. So these aren't for the reseller market, they've gone out into circulation. And the 20 yuan notes, which you can see there, I think they're quite pretty looking things, selling at about 4 times of face value on a marketplace called Taobao, which is owned by Alibaba, and it's I guess an eBay-like marketplace where resellers can sell things. And interestingly, resellers are advertising to buy these 20 yuan notes for up to 60 yuan. So they're paying 3 times face value from the general public and just making 20 yuan margin on them. So not a huge margin. So this sort of reselling of new products doesn't just happen in Australia. We're not unique that way. What is interesting was that the authors of the South China Morning Post article actually went to an investment advisor at a well-known investment advisory firm in Shanghai, and the gentleman that they asked said, "This speculative behaviour has no objective basis for value." So what does that mean? It means that just because people are paying 4 times face value for these notes, it doesn't mean they're worth 4 times face value. And there's probably, I guess, a lesson in there for all of us if we're speculating on new release products, that just because people are paying multiples of face value or multiples of release price, it doesn't make them worth multiples of face value of multiples of release price. So interesting comment there from a investment advisor. Right, so a few more hellos here. Hello, Susan. Hello, Gabriel from Narry Warren. Thanks for joining in. Daryl says he wants a dragon note because he's a dragon. Michelle, hello, Michelle. How are you? And Antonius is saying eBay should do something about that behaviour, such as applying selling fees if that happens all the time, or ignore the cancelled transactions of their median price. That's an interesting idea. The trouble, Antonius, is that there's unscrupulous buyers and there's unscrupulous sellers. So there would be buyers then that would go through sellers' accounts and buy up all sorts of things and then refuse to pay just to force the seller to pay final value fees. So you can't win. You can't win. Right, next item in the news is a mule that sold on Valentine's Day in England, and this is a mule I hadn't heard of. So what you can see there is a picture of a Lord Kitchener £2 coin, They were minted in 2014. There was 5.7 of them minted. And if you look at that picture there, just below the Queen's head, you can see the denomination, which is £2. That's on the obverse, or the head side of the coin. But a very small number were minted with the wrong obverse die that didn't have a denomination on it. Now, the picture there is of the normal £2 coin, which is worth £2. But the ones that were minted without a denomination on the head side of the coin are a mule, because of course they were a heads die and a tails die that weren't meant to be used together. Not meant to be used together, which is what the definition of a mule is. A mule is not a coin with a double rim, of course. It is a coin where the obverse, tails or collar die were not meant to be used together. So these Lord Kitchener £2 mules, which I said I've never heard of before, and I kind of want one now. One of them came up for auction at a small auction house in a small British town, and it auctioned for about £1,500 on Valentine's Day. So worth quite a bit more than our Australian year 2000 mules in average circulated condition. And what makes this really interesting is that the person who sold the coin actually sent it into the Royal Mint, and they provided an authentication letter saying that it was a real mule of that particular type. So again, not unique to Australia. Australia is not the only country that has mules that can be found in circulation. They can also be found in the UK. Next item in the news was a fantastic, and I do love the history behind this particular hoard of Anglo-Saxon silver coins. They were found in Essex over a period of 2 years, 2019 and 2020. Essex is just to the northeast of metropolitan London, and there are 122 Anglo-Saxon silver coins found. Each coin was worth 12 shillings, so quite a significant amount of money there. And 120 of the 122 coins dated within 5 years. Okay, dated within 5 years of 1066. So they covered the reign of Edward the Confessor and Harold II, who were the two kings leading up to a momentous event that happened in 1066, which of course was the invasion of Duke William of Normandy and the Battle of Hastings in 1066. And that of course led to the collapse of the British native British kings, and the Norman kings took over from that point forward. So it's obviously believed that these 122 coins were probably buried by a soldier who went off and fought for the British against the Normans in the Battle of Hastings, and died and never came back and picked these coins up. So I just find that link between the coins and probably one of the momentous events in most momentous events in English history. I find that link to just be fascinating. They're all being auctioned by Dixon & Webb, who are an auction house in London, and they're expected to fetch northwards of £180,000 for the whole group. So pretty remarkable find there. Next item in the news, and I did change the title of this because perhaps it wasn't very nice, but there's a couple of slides there and you can read the bottom one and make of it what you will. The alligator Thibodeau, who is in an enclosure in a Omaha zoo, came down sick and had to be operated on by the zoo vet, and it was found that Thibodeau had 70 coins in his guts that he had swallowed. So they've sedated him and stuck a plastic tube and a camera down his gullet and successfully removed all of the coins. And they've put out a plea to the visitors to the zoo to stop throwing coins in the alligator's pond for good luck, because of course there's no such thing as good luck. It's just something you've made up in your own head, and alligators don't eat coins, and they don't need coins in their enclosure. So as that slide says at the bottom there, sometimes I worry about the future of humanity for people who throw good luck coins in an alligator enclosure and make the poor alligator sick. So let's hope that Thibodeau has made a full recovery and people stop throwing coins into his pond. Peter's saying, if you're going to throw coins to the alligator, throw yourself over with the coins. Well, my suggestion would be rather to leave the coins on the footpath as a donation and then just throw yourself in the pond as alligator food. Now, we'll just have a look at some comments here before we talk too much more about the future of humanity there. No, there's nothing there that I'll comment on. Thank you for your comments, everyone. Right, so Susan McDornan sent me a question last week about clarifying some basic numismatic terms, and I've decided that's what we would do today. She asked me to just go back over some basics, because I forget sometimes that not everyone knows as much as what a lot of our viewers do. Some people are new to this hobby, and a lot of the terms that I throw around without defining them can be a bit confusing. So I thought we would just have a look at some pictures and revisit some terms that some of us might take for granted, but new collectors perhaps are still learning. So the first one is blank and planchets. So of course, coins are struck generally on round discs of metal. Of course, that's not always the case, but in general, on round discs of metal. Those discs of metal are punched out of a strip of metal sheet, and the discs are of a certain size. Technically, numismatically, when those round discs are punched out, they are called blanks. That's the technical term. And then sometimes those blanks are put through what is an upsetting mill, and an upsetting mill basically is two dies that roll the blank in between them like this, and they apply a raised edge to the blank, and technically that is now known as a planchet. Now, why I keep saying technically is because anyone who rigorously says, oh, that's definitely a blank and that's definitely a planchet, and you're wrong, is being sort of a bit obtuse, I guess. I have no problem, and any experienced coin collector worth his or her salt should have no problem with the terms being used interchangeably. Otherwise you have to say things like the Australian 50-cent coin is struck on a blank, because 50-cent blanks are not put through an upsetting mill, whereas 20-cent coins are struck on planchets. And if you say one and not the other, then you don't know what you're talking about, which of course is a load of old rot. Blanks and planchets are effectively unstruck coins. You might ask why the rims are put on coins like that. It's because it allows the struck coin to have higher rims on it, without the coin press having to apply as much pressure during the striking process. So it saves effort during the striking process and helps protect the design of the coin. Why do you want to protect the design of a coin? Because it looks bad for a country if their coins wear out too quickly and the design is removed due to wear in circulation. Why don't you put a rim on a 50-cent coin? Because they're not round, and it's impossible to roll them in between two dies like this to apply an edge to it. And thank you, Greg, for just clarifying that. If you're going to be, I guess, technically correct, that blank at the top there is called a Type 1 blank because it has no applied rim, and the one at the bottom is called a Type 2 blank. But then I've seen them called Type 1 planchets and Type 2 planchets. Don't be worried if you use the terms interchangeably. Basically, a blank or a planchet is an unstruck coin. So that's the first question that we're going to cover today. Now, Susan asked about what strike is, and strike is two things effectively. It's a verb that describes the process of making a coin, and it's an adjective that describes a certain quality of the coin. So coins are struck. They're struck between two dies, and usually they have a collar die as well, which goes around the outside in some sort of press. Presses have ranged from screw presses. Back in the day, they're struck between hammers and a fixed die, the steam-powered presses, hydraulic presses, pneumatic presses. I'm not sure whether presses these days are hydraulic, pneumatic or electric, but regardless, the coins are struck between a heads die and a reverse die and a collar die. So that being struck or strike is the verb. The action of making a coin is striking it. But then afterwards you'll hear coin collectors talking about quality of strike, and that really is how complete the design has been applied to the coin, because of course if you strike a coin at low pressure, then sometimes the design will not be fully applied to the coin blank. If you strike a coin blank that hasn't been annealed, and what annealing is a topic for another day, but basically a coin blank that's too hard, then perhaps the strike will not be fully formed. If you strike a coin on the wrong blank, that is the wrong hardness, for example, perhaps striking a copper nickel blank in a press that's been used to strike gold coins, then maybe that won't be struck up. So quality of strike just determines how fully formed the design elements are. And of course, it's not always about hardness and the amount of pressure applied during the striking process. The dies themselves can wear out as they strike more coins. So design elements can actually wear off of the surface of the dies, and those design elements are not struck from that point forward. So you've got striking a coin, making a coin, then you've got quality of strike, which is how strong the strike is, and there is of course a third way of using strike, and that is perhaps calling a coin an early strike or a late strike, and that means that a coin is struck perhaps in the first 100 or 200 coins that a die pair is used for, versus a coin that is struck by dies that are very late in their life. So sometimes you'll hear that term as well. And just there in the pictures we've got two fairly nondescript 10-cent pieces with the McLoof, is that the McLoof no, the Machin portrait there of the queen, and you can see the top one there that the strike is not fully formed, much of the details are missing, and on the bottom one the strike is fully formed. So I hope that gives a decent explanation of what strike can mean. So there's some coin collecting terms, and I thought what we do now is just have a look at some Australian terms. If you're not a Australian collector, these might be new to you. If you are a new Australian collector, they might be new to you as well. Rabbit ears and spew-roo. Our indigenous dollar coin here, which has been made from 1984 to present, most years has been struck with what's called the mob of roos design on the reverse, and that's a design with 5 kangaroos. And there are some weak points in that design that if the metallurgy of the coin dies is not correct, then the coin dies can actually deteriorate and break, and those breaks in the die can lead to extra blobs of metal on the struck coins. Now those are called die, I call them die chips, some people call them cuds. I'm not really fussed if you call them cuds or die chips, but there is one that can form behind the ear of the top kangaroo, and you can see it there in the top image circled in red, laying on the back of the kangaroo there, and it looks like rabbit ears, and those coins are called rabbit ear cuds or rabbit ear die chips. They don't happen every year, but they do happen across a lot of years. Exactly what years I couldn't tell you off the top of my head. It is listed on our coin collecting blog, but every year there is a possibility that that year will have rabbit ears or not. So that is a rabbit ears die chip or cud. The other one is a spew-roo, and you can see on the bottom picture there you've got another die chip or cud in between the head and the back of the kangaroos. Of course Australians look at that and go, oh, that kangaroo's had a chunder on the back of the one in front of it, so of course we call it the spew-roo. Other countries perhaps have a little bit more decorum than what we do and might call it something else, but that's what we call a spew-roo. It doesn't just happen on the top kangaroo and the second top kangaroo, it can happen on the between the second and third one as well. So that's what a spew-roo is. The last one we're going to look at is a double bar, and I didn't have time to take a new picture this morning, so I've had to go back into the archives and find this one. This is a 1966 round 50-cent piece. The grass around the emu and kangaroo on the 50-cent piece, there were 2 pieces of grass behind the emu's head there, and you can see it there indicated by the red arrows. They were a design element, and as far as I've been able to tell, that design element has been present on all 1966 50-cent pieces. I did spend a couple of years looking at every 1966 50-cent piece that came through this shop, and every one of them had a trace of those pieces of grass, which are known as double bars behind the emu's head. But it was found to be a weak point in the die, I believe, which caused failure, and the design element was removed. But it has reappeared across certain years. 1979 and 1980 are the two best known years. There's also some other years where it's been found. So collectors of this particular variety know the year. Peter's saying no, I said something wrong. We'll wait for Peter to clarify what I said wrong in the comments. It was 79 and 80 is the best known years. Other collectors of these know that they appear in other years, and I believe it is found in a proof set. And I'm not quite sure what year that is. That's what a double bar is. Perhaps the history behind it I've got wrong. Peter will clarify that with me offline, no doubt, and I'll correct myself next week. But that's what a double bar is. Thank you for persevering through there. Right, that's it for this week. You probably know by now that something's coming up this week. Again, we're not allowed to say what it is. I would strongly advise, if you do find out what it is, that you enter the mints ballot for it. And that's it. That's all I can really say. Do enter the mints ballot for what may be happening later this week. And I cannot advise that in any stronger terms. So good luck for everyone in that. That's it for this week. Thank you so much to Peter for supplying me with information and allowing me to bump ideas off of him today. Thank you to Susan for supplying me with questions. Our guide dog Willa left us today, which has not been much fun. We're getting a new one on Wednesday, new dog on Wednesday. So if you come in on Saturday and you see the new dog here on Saturday, make sure you say hello. Don't get him too excited though, because it will be his first day here in the shop, and we don't want to razzle him up too much. So maybe leave him alone on Saturday and say hello to him in a few weeks' time. Catherine and I are very much looking forward to getting a new dog. We've been without one for 4 hours now, and it's pretty terrible. That'll be it for this week. Happy collecting, everyone. Stay safe, and we'll see you next week. Bye for now.